Happening? What's happening? Greetings, greetings, greetings. Testing one, two, three. Back. I'm back. I'm back. I know it's been a little minute. I know the shows have been few and far between, and I'm still struggling to come up with actual dates, or not actual dates, but actual days when I'm gonna be doing these streams. Kind of working and then also working. You know, it's kind of difficult to really implement something else because it's just so much that we have to deal with. But anyway, I've been going really really hard. It's been working, been doing some overtime. Had the company party yesterday. My kid is was student of the month. Had her function that I had to wake up early for at some point this week. Was it Thursday? Thursday this week. Just a whole bunch of things happening. I just came back from upstate. I went to Jersey. Just a whole bunch of things happening just in the space of a few days. But yeah, I sat there and I decided, you know what, I want to make a stream, but this isn't gonna be like a stream where I'm gonna try to find like a topic or something that's popping in media. Right now, I'm just gonna find something to talk about, but it's not gonna be something that's external, right? Somewhat external, but mostly internal and kind of like from my experience and sort of something that I've been kind of dealing with, not really struggling with, but dealing with recently. And it's not to say that when I say struggle with it, I don't mean it's something that it's hard for me to like look past or to do without, so to speak. But it's something that I kind of, how would you say now? Sometimes I want everybody to be cool, everybody to be happy, and then other times I'm just like, yo, you know what? I really don't care. You understand what I'm saying? And it just so happened that something happened this week where I was like caught in between whether or not I should actually, sort of indulge in something where it's gonna make certain people not quite happy, right? And and I was okay with that. I was absolutely okay with that. Um, but this, it's a part of life. It is a part of life. I think people have their image of what it is that you're supposed to be and what it is that you're supposed to do. And if you're not careful, people will sort of find ways to manipulate you into doing exactly what it is that they want done, right? Or what exactly it is that they want for your life, right? So, like, you'll find yourself as an adult sometimes almost bending to other people's will, whether it be directly or indirectly. And then inwardly, it's sort of like the separation where you're sort of like, hold on, I really don't want to do this. And then a part of you struggles to sort of say, hey, listen, I don't want to do this and I'm not going to do this, right? Because the empath in you is like, you know what? I don't want to sort of just like, I don't want to figuratively punch them in the face or hurt their feelings or whatever it is. I don't want them to, sort of look at me in a different light. But at the end of the day, if you sort of remove yourself from that aspect of you that doesn't want to do it, and there's just a little bit. I mean, sometimes, listen, sometimes you're just gonna have to do certain things and make sacrifices. But then other times, it's just like, yo, I really don't want to do this. And then we struggle sometimes to just make that decision that, yo, hey, listen, I'm just not gonna do this, right? So yeah, was kind of dealing with something like that, but it was like someone that I felt like did something that was sort of dishonorable, and I felt like people kind of made decisions behind my back, and I I still wanted those people to be okay. Like, I still wanted those people to be happy. I still wanted those people to be cool. Even though there was an element, or there was a part of me that was really upset, and a part of me that felt justified for being upset. I was like, man, you know what? I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to go there. And you know something? It's cool. I'm going to make this decision because you did A, B, and C. I didn't approve of A, B, and C. I'm not going to continue to sort of bend my will and what makes me unique and put my happiness and how I feel on the back burner to make you feel good. Right? So I made that decision. I made a decision not to participate in something. And it's a breath of fresh air, to be completely honest with you. Sometimes you got to do stuff like that. Sometimes you just got to stand up for what it is that you believe in. Anybody mentioning anything about politics in here is getting banned. I really don't care. Yes, I voted for Kamala Harris. Yes, I didn't vote for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. You're absolutely right about that. Yes, I voted for Kamala Harris. And if given the opportunity, I would do it again. Anybody mentioning anything else about politics, I'm banning your ass from this channel. So, Timekeeper, bye. Have a good life. That felt so good. You see how that works? Right? Now you can go along and do your thing in your little minion pawn world. Right? I wouldn't have it any other way. If I had the opportunity to do it again, I would do it again. And I would do it even better this time. Right? Knowing now what I know, I would do it even better. So yeah, it's one of those things. Now let me see what else is happening. Poor Timekeeper. He wasn't so bad. Oh, poor Timekeeper. Oh, poor Timekeeper. Oh, we're going to cry for him. Vague advice says Chess's crust. You don't have to take it. You don't have to take it, right? It's not advice. It's my experience. This is cryptic reasoning. So none of this stuff I'm giving you is going to be something where I'm telling you, hey, listen, this is something that you must implement in your life in order to be happy or be who, to fulfill your destiny. Nah. Mm-mm. What I'm sharing with you is an experience that I've had, a recent experience that I've had, where I realized that I don't have to bend to the will of other people. I don't have to guilt myself into feeling like I have to bend over backwards for other people in order to make them happy at my own expense. Right? And this isn't in sort of like an individuality sort of thing, but especially when I feel like people are somewhat selfish in their action, and then they want you to be selfless to them, even after their own selfishness, when they make things about them without even considering you. So this is my thing, my experience that I just had, that I felt that I'm going to share with you guys. So whether you feel like it's vague advice or you feel like it's advice you don't want to take, man, this is cryptic reasoning. You ain't got to take nothing that I say. But this right here, this is for individuals who not only think for themselves, but also challenge the things that other people say in terms of, and I'm not talking about politics, and I'm not talking about programming. Well, I am somewhat talking about programming. But the way how things are programmed and the way how we're programmed in this modern sort of world. I was going to say modern generation, but just this modern world, right? And sort of how we live in this age of misinformation, right? Like unbelievable misinformation. It absolutely, right? The amount of misinformation that we see on a day-to-day basis. And the thing is this, right? people actually end up believing this misinformation, right? Because they sort of lack that ability, and not even the ability, because it's in there somewhere, but it's buried, this ability that they buried inside of themselves to just think critically and sort of reason their way out of a situation. So this is what this channel is about. This is what we do here. Most of the stuff that we're doing is live. I am working on making some content that's beyond just live content. But that was one of those things where it's like, sort of had like a writer's block. But yeah, again, this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is for people who want to think for themselves. Right? This is for people who sort of are challenging the norm. Right? And the norm in today's society, in today's world, is misinformation, and people will willingly support this misinformation. People will willingly believe this misinformation. People will willingly champion this misinformation and deceive other people as well. And maybe this is something that's been happening for a very, very long time throughout history. But at the times that we live in right now, it's an absolutely astronomical level of not only misinformation, not only deception, but people actually believing this information, and people actually just being able to pull up tablets, pull up computers, pull up their phones in their pockets, turn on the TV and the radio, and it's just this stuff just seeping into their psyche. Right? So that's where we at with it. Someone says gift of gab. Big up to you. I know, says K Newman. Big up yourself, K Newman. He yap more than Unk. Okay. How about that gap tooth? How about it? I don't know. He could an apple through a pocket fence, says Jesus Crust. Okay. Good troll, I guess. What's this guy on about, says the Bapto. Sammy Hagar, what's up? Is this the guy on a psychiatrist couch? What you're talking about? Poor timekeeper. He wasn't bad. You look like my grandpa. You wish I looked like your grandpa. Very nice and reasonable, says the same person who says I look like their grandpa. You wish. Big up to your grandpa, but yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Alan, who ID? Let's go, MFF. Who is your grandpa? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, bunch of stuff. Why? You're like a friendly friend. You are a good person. Thank you, I suppose. A better compliment would be you look like a real person. Big ups to you, man. Thank you so much, though. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. It good, you good, I'm fine. What misinformation? Give examples. I could give a host of different examples. But I don't want to get off into politics. But so many things, right? Like, for instance, what's been happening with the Jay-Z situation, and initially, right, from my understanding, and this is not only alleged, but this is what's being reported, is that the initial person that took on the case, or not the initial person, because evidently, all right, so a little backstory. So recently, in the news, there's been situations happening where people like Jay-Z have been getting absolutely hammered in the media, right? Figuratively, of course. But when you kind of dissect the story, when you listen to the story objectively, and you sort of piece everything together, none of it really makes sense. right? But because Jay-Z is who he is, right? People actually choose to actually believe these things. Even though it's clear as day, when you piece everything together, none of what's being said is making any sense. Like the story of the person that's alleging these things, it's just all over the place. Like literally all over the place. Right? So even when, right, and this is something where I may or may not do a video about this, but this is, I'd have to like kind of dive too much into it, right? But even though people see, right, there's a clear disconnect, there's a clear border between the story that's being told and piecing it together with how things really actually work in the third dimension. And even though people kind of know that these things are false, allegedly, they still choose to believe the misinformation. Even though all the evidence points to this being somewhat of a cash grab. So that's one example. I could give a host of other examples. But again, I don't really want to get too much into politics. But I'll give you another example in terms of, a few weeks back. No, actually, it was probably a month or two back. It's probably 2 months back. There's like a rapper that a lot of people reported that this rapper went to jail. It turns out the rapper didn't actually go to jail. It was everybody kind of just wanting to be the first to a story. Somebody put out some false information, right? And then all the other blogs started running with the false information. Come to find out, the guy's like, wait, what are y'all talking about? Who, me? Same sort of thing happened to a rapper out of Florida, right? Where people thought said that he got popped, right? Come to find out, that didn't really happen. But again, people wanting to be first to the story. And here's the thing, because there's an incentive for people to actually, be first to the story and put out the information, even if it is misinformation, right? There are people out there that's just like, hey, listen, this is entertaining. So it must be true. And if it's not true, I want it to be true. Right? So this is exactly what I mean. And it's dangerous because people are programmed to kind of, believe things that aren't really what it is. It's dangerous because it can cost certain people absolutely everything. Like, people will run with a story that's entertaining more than they would run with something that's truthful, something that's fact. You understand what I'm saying? Like, the narrative is what people are looking at more than anything else. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the misinformation culture that we kind of are residing in right now. And that's the unfortunate part, because again, how powerful the information tools that we use, that we have at our that we have at our fingertips, right? Whether it be, again, the computer, the phone, the tablet, you name it, etc., etc. Information in a drop of a dime, right? Just type something in, boom, pop up, information. Now, out of all of this misinformation, you got to use critical thinking, you got to use reasoning. You got to use all of these things to really dissect it and find out what is actually true. And of course, as people, as human beings, we want to believe, sort of the mystic, right? And sometimes we want to believe things that are not true, whether it be it sort of helps our ego, or it sort of eases the pressure of us actually immersing ourselves into the harsh reality that we reside in. It gets a little crazy because I oftentimes I challenge religion. Some Ever since I was a little kid, I really was challenging religion. I think with the first maybe 6 years, it's sort of like programming, right? Where I would just kind of sit there and just listen to it and just nod and just yes, yes. Oh, this must be true because all the adults around me believe this stuff, if not 99% of them, right? Very rarely, and the ones that don't believe in this stuff, you can't really tell because they still kind of go through the motions and they still kind of go to the church, most of them, and they still kind of go to the Sunday schools and all of that sort of stuff. But then when you kind of think for yourself, there's this aspect inside of you that's like, hold on. Well, again, the dots don't connect. These things don't really make sense to me. But everybody's doing it. So it must be true. About 8 years old, seven, probably, closer to 7, maybe 8, but 7 or 8, right? I remember sitting in a church and I remember asking the pastor, right, of the preacher, the bishop, or whatever it is, right? But the guy that was leading the Sunday school, was it Sunday? No, it was like one of the Bible studies, right? So it wasn't really Sunday school, but like the kids were kind of sitting in this area being preached to, right? And I remember raising my hand, and I remember how relaxed the pastor was before I asked him this question, right? What question do you guys think I asked this pastor? Because he was just so relaxed. Like the dude was just chilling. He was just in the cut, just chilling, just saying whatever he was. Sort of, had this sort of I don't want to say bravado, but just how relaxed he was. I just remember his relaxed demeanor. And I remember when I asked him the question, all of a sudden, and then obviously it's hindsight because you kind of look back and you kind of see the sort of change, right, at that time when the question was asked. Because here he is, he's preaching about something that he doesn't know anything about. And subconsciously, me at 7, 8 years old, I'm like, oh, huh? Pastor, where does God come from? Um, um, um. And I just kind of remember him just not being able to really answer that question. And of course, to be completely fair, that's a very left field question. That's not necessarily a question you would expect people to ask, especially when they're sitting in a church, and especially when they're so young. You don't expect them to ask that, even because we all know, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys have any kids or whatever, but if you have kids, you probably know that they're gonna ask questions, things that they don't know they're gonna ask. I didn't know. I always wanted to know, where does God come from? And the pastor could not tell me where God come from. Not that he needs to know everything, but for a kid, I'm kind of looking to these adults feeling like they know a considerable amount more than I do. Especially of the sort of subject or the thing that they're talking about right here. Like they know a considerable amount more than I do, especially on this subject. Like, I mean, you're the pastor or the bishop or you're the leader of this congregation. How could you not know the answer to that when you're up here preaching it? So yeah, so that sort of just opened up Pandora's box. Just opened Pandora's box. And even then, there still was an element of me that, because what I started realizing, especially when it came to church and these things, right, is that they would sort of really target your fear. You understand what I'm saying? Like the things that you feared the most, Like these are like the vanity and fear, right? Especially fear, right? And then you teach you, they like fear God. Like this is the thing that they tell you that you should be doing. Like this, your relationship with God should be one based with the foundation is on fear, right? So of course, as a kid, not really knowing any better, this sort of it just became the thing that they were kind of and then even after asking that question, I still obviously I'm going here because hey, mom's going here, grandpa's wife's going there, and it's crazy because the men in the household, like my grandfather, not my father's father, like my father's father, what I mean, he actually went to church, right? My mother's father, I never saw him in church a day of my life. And but the irony is, this is the ironic part. So my father, I've never seen my father. No, I see my father in church, but that was for my great grandma's funeral on my mom's side. Like he actually showed up and was there. So I seen that. But my mom, who her father didn't go to church, was actually the one that kind of used to go to church a lot more than my pops. But yeah, you know, these things really open Pandora's box. So like that's one of those things you kind of expect the people that are preaching about these things to actually know what it is that they're talking about. And oh, had that question been asked and it was answered, it probably wouldn't have opened Pandora's box. But it's like I said, I still spent another 2 years because like around the year 2000, I don't know if people kind of remember this shit. Like the year 2000 was crazy. Like the year 2000 was absolutely mind-blowingly crazy. So in the year 2000, right? Remember you had like Y2K and everybody was like, there was this the whole Y2K sort of movement, right? And everybody was talking about Y2K, Y2K this, Y2K that, right? Like Y2K, Y2K, Y2K. So in the region where I was at, right? And this is why I kind of thought this church that I was going through was like an actual cult or something. It was really weird. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is how I felt. In hindsight, right? Like at the time, I didn't even know what a cult was. But and it was just sort of this group think, right? Where there's like they just prey on the energy of the masses, and they keep them so trapped in this element of just fear of the unknown, fear of thinking freely, fear of actually just living life, right? And they would just sort of just implement, like just hone in on you and just tell you, hey, listen, are you ready for the rapture? Right? Like this would be the common theme. Like are you ready for the rapture? And this would just be the thing that they would just hone in on, right? And as a kid kind of sitting there, it's like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Why is everybody behaving this way? And the adults around you, like a lot of times you see people and they're getting in the spirit and like the ladies are in the church and doing all the and I'm not trying to make fun of it or anything like that, but the words that they would be saying, and all of that sort of stuff, right? Speaking in these sort of different dialogues or different languages that, you know, yeah, it was just different. Sort of hard to really make out what it is that they were actually trying to communicate. But in their word, from their perspective, this was the highest level of spirituality that you could actually attain while still being on earth, according to them. Right? Being filled with the Holy Ghost or getting into spirit. And it was so, kind of looking back, how traumatizing that crap was. Because you would see somebody who would seemingly normal, right? Or what we would deem as normal. And then you would see, like, I don't know, let's just say Miss Becca, right? Who's normal all day, and then you see her now and she's tweaking, for lack of a better term, right? Just on the floor, doing all of these crazy like this is lack of a better term again, doing all of these moves, doing all these speaking in tongue, doing all of this sort of stuff, and you're sitting there, you're a kid, and you're just wide eyed. This is you, like you're just until you start to kind of get a little bit used to it, and you don't sort of see how traumatizing it is as much anymore, because you start to get a little bit too kind of numb to it. But this is you. And there's another one doing the same thing. And then you got this lady and she's running all the way to the back of the church and doing all of this sort of stuff. And this is just happening right throughout. And it's like, yo, what's happening here? But the year 2000, Y2K, that was the year everybody was kind of teaching, like just saying. And again, this is what I was talking about when I said misinformation, right? Because in the year 2000, believe me when I tell you, bro, according to the church that I was going to, when I was a kid, God was coming that year. Are you ready for the rapture? Was the common theme. Are you ready for the rapture? Are you baptized and filled with the Holy Ghost? So naturally, when these things are kind of drilled into you, right? Drilled into you, and you're seeing and you're sitting there and you're all wide-eyed, just like, I think most kids would conform. Me, somewhat, but not all the way. I don't think I really have that element, like the free spirit in me, just the intangibles in me doesn't really, I just don't got it in me to just be conforming to what everybody else is doing. 11:11, that's crazy. But yeah, just don't have it in me. So even sort of seeing and hearing all of these things, there was that part of me that was just like, yo, hold on. All right. I am kind of, the stuff that they saying, it's resonating with the part of me. But it's like when you kind of look at it from a different perspective, you start to really realize this is not a feeling that feels good. Everything is just so rooted in fear when it came to like that religion and that church and all of that sort of stuff. Everything was just so rooted in fear based. Like if you passed on right now, are you going to heaven or hell? Like if God were to come right now, are you going to heaven or hell? Are you baptized? Are you filled with the Holy? Like this would be the common theme. So when the adults around you are conforming, you don't even really have a choice, right? You don't. Almost. It's kind of, you're a kid. You do what the adults tell you, or you go pay your own bills somewhere. It's the unfortunate part about it when we were growing up. But yeah, ready for the rapture and the fear based. And I remember that year in the year 2000. No bull crap. Year 2000. I remember that year. Like I would always, like whenever you were driving, like my mom was driving a car, and I'm like, whether I'm sitting in the back or I'm sitting on the side of the car, I would just always be looking out, and I would just be so terrified because the way how they used to sort of sing this song, and the moon shall turn into blood, and the Son of Man shall appear, Zion awake. This is the song that they used to sing. Awake, Zion awake, awake and trim your lamp. This is my people are Jamaican, so this is, if you guys don't know the song, you probably don't know that. I don't know what lamb they were talking about trimming. Maybe there was a sheep somewhere or lamb somewhere that they were trimming. I'm not entirely sure what exactly that means or signifies, and didn't quite understand the metaphor of the moon shall turn into blood. So here I am taking this literally, and every time I would look out and see the moon, and the moon would have just a little shade of orange or just a little different color, I would be terrified, and I would not open my mouth and tell my mom that I was terrified about this sort of stuff that was happening. It's just something that we didn't have this conversation. But I'm looking out and I'm like, jeez, the moon is orange. But anyway, that year was supposed to be the year that God was going to come, that God was coming back. And I remember what's crazy is a part of me didn't believe it, but the part of me that was fearful did believe it. But the part of me that didn't believe it, I remember I made a bet with someone that it wasn't going to happen. Someone not that much older than me. We were kids. We just made a bet. We even shook on it. I'm like, nah, God's not coming this year. Whole time I'm terrified of whether or not he really is going to come. Anyway, it just so happened that he didn't come that year. Or sort of the God that, people sort of personify. Not the spiritual being that's just always here and is just everywhere and it's just always is, always exists. Not that one. That's not the one that they were talking about. But anyway, looking back at that year, that was a very, 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 very terrified year for me. And that was a year that really shaped a lot having to do with my life. But I think sort of living beyond that year and seeing that things didn't kind of pan out how everyone thought it was going to pan out that year, I think that sort of opened a different dimension as well. So now I'm not just focused so much on the things that people are saying. Still, there was still an element of sort of being a little bit gullible when you're a kid because you sort of think other people have answers that you don't. And it's not to say that you have all the answers when you become an adult, but sort of networking and being around people, you start to kind of see like the dishonest sort of, I don't want to say nature, but culture, and how people socialize, and how people have adapted to modern day society. I think, and maybe this is the empath in me, I think people deep down want to be honest. I think people deep down, they want to be honest, but they don't truly know themselves. And there's an element of themselves that's sort of about self that keeps them from actually expressing that aspect of themselves that really desires to sort of come out of fear of ridicule. But yeah, Anyway, that's my whole little sort of speech about misinformation. But yeah, I've been thinking about actually, the direction that I want to bring the channel in, and I know I've been kind of promising for a few weeks that we're gonna start making content, but I really I've been trying, right? But I always get this is what happens. Sometimes I tend to overthink things, and in overthinking things, I tend to not take the action necessarily sometimes, and that's something that I definitely have actually come to terms with. And I decided today that I was going to actually take some action. So I drove all the way upstate to a completely different environment, right? and I ended up sitting up there and just typing out exactly the direction of that I want this channel to. So now that we have a foundation and the direction that we want to bring cryptic reasoning, now what follows is the content. So stay tuned. There will be content. I'm gonna start making content this week. Joseph, what's good, Brody? Bro, I really admire the shape of your skull. It's crazy. That is a crazy talk. Dear God, please help this guy get to the point. This guy's gonna troll me all night. Navia Rhodes, how you doing, sweetheart? I'm sorry I didn't see you guys. Yeah, vague words like, what the hell is going on? I'm trying to figure out what misinformation. Give examples. I actually did. I think I'm actually rereading that. Yeah, okay. It's a little bit up. But anyway, that's my little spew. My little dialogue that I figured we'd have tonight. Now, again, more content coming soon. Cryptic reasoning. Definitely going through a complete overhaul. I'm going to be doing these lives as frequently as I can. But as far as actual content, that's what we're going to be focused on. It's not going to be just live stream content. So stay tuned and take care of yourself, guys. I appreciate this. Thank you so much for tapping in. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.